to Mondays with Mondene, where we discuss issues and politics that affect everybody, especially you, the African American community, and those that are marginalized. Tonight we're going to talk about something that's intriguing, the struggles that people face when they are in business as entrepreneurs, and especially when they are marginalized. What's the issue? What's the big deal? Why is it such a big deal? Tonight I have with me a very special guest, somebody that everybody knows in Portland, and if you don't know him, you should know him. You know Hasam Photography Studios or Hasam Photography? Naim Hasam. Yay! He's an Olympiad, a good guy, a husband and a father, and one of my dearest friends. We just love him, and we want to welcome him to the show tonight. Hey, Naim.
Hey there. Thank you very much for having me back on the show. Well, it's always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to have you. Well, you know, we say Naim is coming. Everybody gets excited. Naim is coming. Naim is coming. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure about that.
Well, you know, listen,
but it's a good story.
Tell me how you're doing, and tell me about what you're doing lately in your business, and tell us where your business is, and break that down for us.
Things have been well, with coming out of the pandemic, and like most businesses, large and small, navigating the changes in the environment, much of which we have no control over. But as you mentioned, I'm a photographer. I've been in this business for the last 20 years, starting officially in about 2002. Prior to that, I worked in corporate for about 15 years.
What'd you do in corporate?
In sales. I was telecommunications sales. Mm-hmm. Started off with virtually no experience. Mm-hmm. And because of the management environment, who ultimately recruited me, because as we talked before, I was on the Olympic team, and so I had an opportunity to come and interview with this company mm-hmm. based on that experience. And their belief was that they could teach me the other aspects of how to do their business. And finding someone, obviously, with the drive, determination to want to be better after competing at that level. It turned out to be a great opportunity to mm-hmm. learn and grow in an area that I didn't know existed prior to.
I was in sales as well, working for the 3M Corporation, 19 years old, a kid, but here I am working for 3M as a business consultant on business machines I didn't understand. And then it opened the door for me working for the Tandy Corporation. I was the first black divisional manager for Radio Shack at just 20 years old. So, sure. That's a good thing. And it branches us off into imagining something greater. Mm-hmm. And then when you can achieve some greater things with entrepreneurship, especially being African American, how have your experience been with as being an African American in business, in photography in Oregon? Tell us about a little bit about that.
Well, having grown up here in Portland, Oregon, I think my experiences have been different than some, right? Mm-hmm. Because I was raised by my grandparents, and certainly we have these race issues and all those kind of things. But what I've come to discover is that when you are performing at a high level and you're outperforming the folks who would, in some situations, discriminate against you, but when they're getting their ass kicked, excuse the language.
That's okay.
They find a way to get you on the team,
yeah,
so to speak. And so that's been my experience in terms of how I and some of the other folks that I know have overcome some of these barriers.
So you have to be aggressive.
You have to be assertive. Because there's a difference.
Assertive.
Assertive.
Okay.
Because some folks might interpret this aggressiveness in a negative kind of way, particularly when it comes from us.
Yeah.
So you learn how to be assertive with a smile. And when you're delivering based on whatever those deliverables are, people start to put color, green, ahead of brown.
Yeah, yeah.
Follow what I'm saying?
I get it.
And when you are performing under those kind of conditions, it's different in terms of the opportunity that begins to manifest.
Yeah.
Because I was one of a few in the telecommunications sales industry here in Oregon.
A tough industry.
It was tough. But what I discovered was that those companies, as I mentioned, when you start talking about thousands of dollars in savings to their bottom line, and you came in with this professionalism and knowledge about the industry and about their industry, and you can help them solve their problems, color of my skin became less of a factor because most of my clients didn't look like me. And they were government agency schools and all those kind of things. And so perhaps initially the name Naim could have raised some flags, but once I showed up as a professional, dressed as a professional, and could articulate ideas and concepts about their industry, it seems to lower the tension.
Yeah.
And so I had a list of clients in Southern Oregon, of all places. Right? Yeah, that was my reaction too.
If you all don't know anything about Southern Oregon, it's not a place that is accommodating.
Right. Back in the day, that's where lynchings happened.
Yes,
so
sir.
It wasn't so welcoming.
You heard him say it. I didn't.
to black folks.
Yes, sir.
Right? And so I was reluctant. I had this list of all of these clients and school districts in Southern Oregon. I held on to this list probably for about a year before I started to approach those people. So what I decided to do was just draft a letter because many of them had contracted services with the phone company.
Yeah.
And it was an opportunity to renew those contracts with very little effort because I could prepare a proposal showing them what their savings would be if they renewed the contract. And I'd mail these contracts out. The one that really sticks out to me was a young lady from Ben Lapine school districts. They had, all the schools were connected through a central office-based service, so the contract was the largest I had ever put together. Sent it off to them, she signed it, and sent it back. I'm thinking, holy crap.
Wow.
Because the value to me was $50,000. Minus taxes, it was enough to make a huge down payment on the house that we live in.
Wow. And you're still living there today?
Still living there today. So I decided that we would go to Southern Oregon and just be there and become comfortable in the environment and learn to navigate. And it turned out to be the most lucrative for me in that industry. Part of it, again, was overcoming perhaps my own ideas about what and how they might respond to me. And so I learned, how we dress, how we look, and all those things subliminally makes a difference. And learning that from my fathers and uncles, because they were really nice dressers, and people respond differently.
Right.
And so it turned out to be wonderful.
A suit and a tie makes a difference.
Huge difference.
We talked about assertiveness tonight, and we talked about two important factors, and you just brought something to mind, paradigm shifting. Moving from one ideology to the next, understanding that there's power in the way that you think and portray, in just understanding who you are and how you present yourself, moving yourself out of the place of I can't to the place of I can. Would you think so?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's still the uncertainty involved because we're moving into territories that are foreign.
Let's talk just a little bit more about your photography. Okay. And as we're talking, you're going to see pictures that Naim has shot. He's an incredible photographer because he's more than just a photographer. He's a visionary, and he does things with his art, and I call it his art, that is incredible. And you're going to see some of the stuff he does. But while you're looking at some of that, we're going to talk about black entrepreneurs of the past and the remarkable trailblazing things that they've done, including names like John H. Johnson, the great publisher, and Annie T. Malone, and Madam C.J. Walker. The hot curl queen. What stories or aspects of their journeys do you find particularly inspiring, Naim, or impactful given the societal challenges that they face during their times? And how do we compare that to right now?
I think the difference, or if there are differences, I think there's a different awareness now. Awareness now than back then, when there weren't as many, perhaps, quote, trailblazers, willing to risk being trailblazers because of the negative consequences of standing out.
Yeah.
But when I think about what's happening now in the business community, what I see happening and I've experienced is there's this lack of awareness about how to navigate, one, some of the legal structures within the business community, which becomes a barrier of entry for a lot of small businesses, right? We're good at what we do, but we don't maybe understand what type of legal business structure is best for us, or what the tax implications are and how to keep those records and sales and marketing and all of those kinds of things that really are 85% of the business. Has nothing to do with what you actually do. It's about all the other structures that has to be in place that allows you to do
So
what you
building
do.
an infrastructure based on what's necessary, so you have to be able to research and become aware.
Yes. Or you have to have access, or at least some awareness on what is it, what are the business, or the types of business options available. Am I a single member LLC or sole proprietor or C Corp, S Corp? What are the differences in the type of business that I'm engaged in? Which is the best for me? And then,
Whoa, LLC, PLC.
Yeah, these are all different types of business structures depending on how you want to set up. If you are the president, you have board of directors, you have the types of members on your team and the type of business you want to be engaged in. There's a lot of different structures that one has to be aware of. And depending on what type of business, again, you're in, it's worth doing some research.
Yeah.
And one of the barriers to entry is that we don't know that. A lot of us are good at what we do, but we're not good at understanding what structure is best for me from a business day-to-day operation and from a tax implication.
So you're talking about, okay, let's make it kind of, because somebody's looking at us right now going, wait a minute, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
So you're a photographer.
Yes, sir.
So when you talk about photography, how would you become aware? What is it that you're looking for? If I was a cake baker, what would I look for? What do you think?
So so my background's a little different in some regards because, as I said, I worked in corporate. And working in that corporate environment, you learn about some of the things that business are required to do. One, write proposals, tax preparation. Well, how do you prepare taxes? But you have to know what records you need to keep and the level of detail in those records. And if you're marketing, what does that mean? We're telling a story about who I am and what I potentially might be providing to you as a potential customer. Part of the marketing strategy. And if you don't have someone who understands that, you have to figure that out, or you have to do some research somewhere to get some of that information. And a lot of times it's trial and error.
Sometimes I think it's easy to overlook those things, especially when you don't know. And just so if you're listening, the Urban League has a really good program in terms of directing you to the different places that will actually take the time and show you step by step how to do those things. There's some organizations like MESO, MESO, and I'm quite embarrassed right now because I don't know what that means in terms of its, but we'll put it on the bottom of the screen, how to get in touch with those people and say, I'm interested in this. And there are other programs like Teach Me to Fish, the programs that Celebration Tabernacle runs, with the director being Robin Gordon. You could call his number and he's going to put it on the bottom of the screen and say, listen, I'm interested in becoming acquainted with how to get involved in this industry. So you have to put some work out there to become aware. And then you talked about those risks. You talked about awareness, and now you're talking about being a risk taker. What does that entail? Well,
there's the wondering if what product or services you are going to offer is viable. And that again is trial and error, and being committed to pivoting if you need to pivot, change directions, add something different, take away something. So with my photography business, for example, when I started out, I was doing things that I was familiar with, weddings and senior pictures. I build relationship with local high schools and elementary schools and would be able to come to various meetings at school and talk to the parents and faculty about my service. And so I started doing what I knew. but through an organization called AWAMI, Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs.
I was trying to think of them. Thank you. Oregon, say it again.
Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs.
And we're going to get that on the screen so that you can see it one more time.
Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs.
There you go.
Abbreviated OAME.
Yes.
And their policy or philosophy is everybody's in, nobody's out.
Yeah.
And Sam Brooks was the founder of that organization many years ago.
Great Sam Brooks.
And we meet a couple times a month and talk through these issues. But it was through AWAMI that I understood or learned about some of these other processes, one of which is state certifications. Okay, we talked about barriers of entry. A lot of small businesses aren't aware of those certifications.
Yes, sir.
And if they are, understanding how do you structure your business and what records do I need to keep, because there's documentation that has to be completed for these government certification programs. And if you don't know that, you miss huge opportunities. And the process of putting that information together is an arduous process. And there's a lot of details. And one of the things I have witnessed over the last 20 years is there's some folks out there doing great business, but they miss the opportunity because of the structure and maybe not having an understanding of all the records they need to keep. So when the government says we need you to complete this 14-hour process, you have to understand what information they are looking for and they needing to complete the application.
Which brings us to understanding the concept of a corporative advantage. Having the corporative advantage, especially rooted in African traditions within the community. Wow, that's a big mouthful. But when you look at being prepared, being aware, taking the risk, getting the access, those things are very necessary for to achieve the success ratio that you want to achieve. So when we talk about corporative advantage, what does that say to you? Especially when we talk about corporative advantage that's rooted in African American traditions or African traditions.
Well, I think you and I know traditionally we've been excluded from a lot of those kind of opportunities for a variety of reasons, which, But once we have the opportunity to be invited, we learn some things that we never knew before. One, like structures, tax structures.
Yes.
What records do I need to keep, and how do I keep those records? Because I have to put together a report to submit to an agency, whether it's a state government, local government, and that's how they're going to determine whether I qualify to be a minority contractor, which puts you in another position to. So what happens now is there are these certifications with the state of Oregon. And if you are on that certification list, that list goes out to all the major organizations, state, local government, business contractors, or whoever, and they're looking at that list. And if you're on that list, they get to check a box if they do business with you, right? And so it behooves us to figure out how to get on the list, for one, so that when those opportunities manifest, it's like being vetted.
Yeah.
So if you're on the list, these organizations say, hey, they've already been vetted, so I don't have to question or wonder if they are legitimate.
Yeah.
And so opportunities manifest that way.
So programs like MISO and AWAMI.
All of those organizations are designed to help guide people through this process and help them understand what
There
records,
you go.
what processes, types of structure do I need to have to take advantage of these kinds of opportunities, which is how I ended up working with some of the government agencies I work with. I would have never known that, but I went through the state certification process. It was time to renew. I'm asking why, because it took me 14 hours one day to put all these papers together, and there was no template to follow. So it was trial and error. Year goes by, and it's time to renew, and I'm wondering why. This was on a Monday. I received a call that same Friday from someone at the city of Portland saying, hey, Naim, I saw your name on the list, and we'd like to know if you want to work with the city. So I call her back, and she walks me through the city's process on how to become certified to work with the city, which was another arduous process, but very beneficial.
So you have to collaborate.
A lot of collaboration.
And community care. See, these organizations are there to help kind of incubate you and say, hey, there's an opportunity for you if you want to follow it.
Sure.
So community and collective care being incubated by these professionals who have gotten together to do nothing but help you. We want to talk about the contemporary success and challenges in present-day landscapes. We see successful figures like Jay-Z and Rihanna making significant strides in various industries. Mm-hmm. Could you kind of highlight their achievements? Well, we know what their achievements are, but and conversely delve into the challenges that modern day Black entrepreneurs encounter, particularly in the context of the recent pandemic. Coming out of that, going into that, and then we've got a lot of land to cross before as we go into the 2024 year. Mm-hmm. It's going to be tumultuous. So what would be some of those things that you would talk about in terms of Black entrepreneurship and highlighting some of that stuff that's going to be crowding the way? What do you think?
You know, the names you mentioned, we have to think about their history, and most of us don't know all of the history.
Yeah.
That got them to the place that they are now. We're talking, they've been involved 20, 30 years in their process. And early on, they were doing stuff that they didn't know what to do. So, yeah. But what I do know that is consistent across that board, there's a passion for the work. And it's different when you like it versus when you love the work.
Yeah.
Because there's a different type of a pain reserved when you approach your work from this place called love versus like, because the discomfort of this process can be overwhelming. If you just like it, the pain can be greater than your ability to like.
So you gotta love it. And you might
decide that I'm going to go get me a job.
Yeah.
But these folks, I know, they love their process.
You got to love it.
And the discomfort, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
That's the mindset. It's like you're all in all the time.
Yeah.
That changes the game.
Yeah.
And when I think about the people that you mentioned, that was at the root of, because we don't know all the struggles they were dealing with day to day when nobody knew their names, and they had these amazing songs and this creative ability, and people like, who are you and why would I even care? Mm-hmm. But they continued to show up and produce and find some ways to create their work and art and put it out into the world. And what I've come to know is there are people along those pathways. All you need is one person to say, yeah, let me give you a shot.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking from personal experience, right, in that regard.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of no's. But I loved my process when I was training and competing. I loved the photography process, and having the business background helps me understand what is involved in that journey, and particularly my Olympic experience, which is the most difficult thing I've ever done. Overlay that discomfort in this process, and it's about, okay, you have to develop this. We hear the term resilience, but entrepreneurship doesn't happen without it.
So I've heard you say two important things. Well, you said a lot of important things, but one of the things that jumped out at me is you say, you got to love it. You got to be in love with this. And you got to learn how to hear no. Yeah. And then one of the things I want to add is that you don't have to be Beyonce. You don't have to be Rihanna, pardon me, and you don't have to be Puff Daddy or any of those people. You don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to be a billionaire. You got to be able to make it and sustain.
You think about those folks, they weren't billionaires 15, maybe 20 years ago, but when they started, they weren't billionaires. They were individuals like most of us, and nobody knew who they were, with the exception of those in the local communities. Mm-hmm. But the difference is, when you look at their history, they were laser focused.
Yeah.
They had if we could sit with them and talk about all the ups and downs and the challenges they had to overcome, it would be a similar story. Maybe the challenges are different, but the mindset, attitude, and the effort that is required on a day-to-day basis, particularly on those days when it's cold, rainy, wet, and you don't feel like moving.
Yes, sir.
Those days become the most important days.
Yes,
and the difference,
sir.
I know for a fact, is when you like it, the pain of that process is greater than your satisfaction. So folks say, I'll just chill out today. But there's something about the spirit of love that drives this process completely different. It's like I wake up, it's raining. Okay, I gotta move because I have goals to achieve, and my desire to achieve those are greater than my discomfort. And I know for a fact that mindset is what permeates amongst all of us, because what's the other option?
Yeah.
There isn't another option.
Yeah. So you got to know that you know that you know,
Yeah.
and
And
you
you
got
will
to go
know
that.
that.
You got to go that you got to go.
And the names that you mentioned, Jay-Z, I mean, they knew. They had this spirit that says, I'm going to do this, and I just need to find someone who is going to support the process.
But you are the process, in a lot of ways. You've got to get up.
You've got to get up.
You got to be motivated, and they've got to be able to see something worth investing in.
Absolutely.
Wow. So,
and again, that comes from the spirit of love. It's different. It's way different than liking something. It's just different.
there are disparities in black entrepreneurship. And many of us don't really address those, and it's crucial for an equitable future. There are lots of systemic hurdles. There are disparities in access to funding. There's disparities in access to information. Again, creating organizations like Awami and MISO, and understanding that you've got people like the Urban League and even the NAACP who are equipped to help us take a step forward. But we've got to be able to take those risks and put ourselves out there. Could you suggest actionable strategies today or initiatives to foster inclusivity and a field where it provides more equitable opportunities for aspiring black entrepreneurs? Boy, that's a mouthful, I know.
No.
But
yeah, I mean,
help us out.
That was good. You know, the thing that I'm reminded of often is that if we don't love what we do, we don't show up as consistently as we need to. Mm-hmm. Because this journey of entrepreneurship it's a challenge.
Yes.
Right. It doesn't matter if all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. There are still some things that we have to do because we have to do them.
Yeah.
And if we don't understand that and we are missing some steps, sometimes those missteps becomes the barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Because they could be used, well, you didn't complete X, Y, Z. And so, therefore, you need to complete X, Y, Z by this time frame, which for many of us is like, first, I don't know what X, Y, Z requirements are, and I don't know where to find them, and the deadline is in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just eliminated myself.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of us get eliminated, because the requirements are so stringent and inflexible, and we're behind in terms of knowledge, information. So we, unfortunately, are eliminated before we even get started. Mm-hmm. And organizations that I've been associated with, like Awami and SCORE, are designed to help with facilitating this gap in information. Because once you have it and you begin to apply it, then those barriers to entry, you figure out, you become a better hurdler.
Yes.
Right? The obstacles don't necessarily go away.
Yeah.
You learn how to, is this one I need to go over? Is there room to go over? Or do I go under it or around it? Or do I find someone who can help me, remove it? And over time, I've come to know that there are people out there that really have the heart of doing that work, that don't look like us, that will, okay, I'm going to leave the door open for you, and you need to be here at this time, because I have to lock the door.
Yeah. When we think about past entrepreneurs and success stories like J.J. Johnson and Madam C.J. Walker, they didn't have some of these hurdles. They had different hurdles.
Yes.
But now in the morass of information, this is the information era, mm-hmm. where you can get all kinds of information at the touch of, the push of a button, right at the tip of your fingertips. It's imperative that we get involved. It's imperative that we get up and begin to move the ball. I want you to talk to us as we get ready to go. And this has been a wonderful conversation, but tell us about one of your greatest success stories and one of your fondest memories about suffrage in this and how you made it through it.
Okay, which part? Well, I can tell. I see a lot of it was this understanding of love of a process came through my training.
Yeah,
training for the Olympics. It was like I'm one of the oldest on the team. There is no next year. This has to work, right? I'm 32 years old. I need to focus on a career, but I have this opportunity. It's like the window's open, it's cracked. I got to get through that sucker, right? And so it was all in all the time. I kept records, documented all of this stuff. Very painful process. That was my foundation for these other things that have come along. Understanding that, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it has to work.
yeah,
And I think with the folks you mentioned, for a lot of us, there is no backwards. It's like you move forward and the wall follows you. So there is no backwards,
yeah,
right? And so whatever that thing happens to be for you, understanding where that spirit is coming from, and if we are willing to continue, it works.
yes,
It always works because there's a spirit that's bigger than us that's also at play that we
Yes.
don't get to know about.
Yeah.
And that's why you and I know it's called moving on faith.
moving by
Because you
faith.
don't get to know how it's all going to work out.
That's right.
And a lot of these folks that you mentioned, there was this deep-rooted spirit element that says this has to work. There is no other option.
Yeah,
And when moving from that place, I can tell you, you start to create energy and spirit, and folks who don't look like you say, okay, I don't know what you're doing, but I think I need to support you
There you
because
go.
you're moving faster and you're going to run me over if I don't get out of the way.
you know, if people like what they see and they understand what they're seeing and they know that it's moving towards something great, they're going to get behind you. Reflecting on the critical importance of sustaining the surge in black entrepreneurship, calling for the concerted efforts to eliminate barriers, foster inclusivity, and embrace cooperative advantage to ensure a more equitable future for all entrepreneurs is really important. I am so glad to have had Naim Hasam with us today, and we thank you all for joining us. Without you, it's impossible. But I tell you what, your dreams can become true, and you can do what it is that you know how to do, but you got to get up and do it. And that's what I said, and that's what I mean. You know what? I want to thank all of you for coming once again, and I want to stop and thank our sponsors, Post Shines, Cafe de la Soul, which is right at 8131 North Denver, the best food on this side of heaven, and we're going to acknowledge Aunties and Tanties Daycare this evening, and then we've got Adorn Electric. They light up your life. A big thanks to all of our staff, Dion, Robin, Paul, and Andy. They're all small people, but guess what? They really stand tall, and they make this thing work for us. And again, Naim, my brother, power to you. And we're so glad to have had you. And if you like this podcast tonight, I want you to hit like, and then like us on Facebook, which is to my right, and then on the what is it? That other thing, YouTube, hey, which is to my left, and leave us comments and tell us what you want us to talk about. And I hope that this podcast inspired you to do better. Listen, you can do better, and we can help each other. We need each other. God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Hey, gang, I've got exciting news. I've just finished my memoirs, and writing them was, wow, a roller coaster, but I'm glad that I did it for me and for you, and it's a way to get to know Edie Montagne just a little bit better. What you thought you knew, you didn't know. It's called From Maladies to Melodies, growing up in the South St. Louis projects, and what God has done in my life even to this day. I'm excited to share it with you. Please look for it coming real soon.
Hey, it's time for you to come to Post Shine. Check out that catfish sandwich. Oh my goodness, is that the shrimp po' boy? Man, look at that chocolate chip cake. Man, I need to get over to Post Shines at 8139 North Denver right now because this food looks delicious. Or call if you'd like, 503-978-9000. And don't miss it, you'll be sorry.
In times gone past, excuses, so let me be reminded. Ooh, I've got to get home and tend to the brand new missus. I need some time alone. Can't this wait until I finish texting on my phone?